7.31 brought a lot of changes to Chen, and in particular to all the jungle creeps. So in this video we're going to be going through all the creeps, talking about all their abilities and how to use them as Chen. So what are the best creeps to take as Chen? Obviously this depends on your own level. With Persuasion level 1 you can only take creeps that have a max level of 3, and you can see that level the creeps have down here. This is level 3, this is level 2, level 1. And here are all the creeps that are up to level 3. All of these, and then later on we're going to talk about creeps that have level 4, level 5, level 6, and then finally we're going to talk about all the ancients as well. In case you're wondering how I can spawn all these creeps here in demo mode and how I can use demo mode on a regular map, I've explained that in the video that I've linked at the top right. So watch that if you want to know all the secrets of demo mode. So now let's jump right and see the level 3 creeps. First of all, we have the Harpies. Obviously, the Harpy Stormcraft are one of the most famous creeps. This creep has the chain lightning ability, which does quite a lot of damage. It is 140 damage, jumps to multiple targets, although it deals diminishing damage there. This is probably the best creep to get at the start. This creep also has a high amount of mana regen, so even though it runs out of mana quickly, it also refills the mana quickly. So this is probably the best creep to get at the start. And another big advantage this creep has is also it has night vision, full night vision. It has 1800 night vision and day vision, just like Slark would. So this creep has a value even beyond the very early game. You can also use this to, for example, block Lincolns. You can use this creep to push out waves. It does piercing damage, so it's also quite good at killing creep waves. Yeah, this creep is just amazing. Of course, mostly an early game creep. Then we also have the Harpy Scout, which in the past used to be kind of a boring creep, also has the full night vision, but that was it. But now it has a new ability that is Takeoff, and this allows it to fly up in the air, and it still has full night vision. So now it has flying vision, and it's like a great creep to use for scouting. It's quite slow when it's flying, but it can pass over cliffs. So this is a very useful creep to take in the mid and late game, just for scouting, because vision is so important in Dota. So very valuable creep later on, but in the beginning you definitely would take the Harpy Stormcrafter. Next up we have the Kobold family. First of all we have the humble Kobold. Doesn't even get an extra name, just Kobold. And there's 3 of these guys in each of these Kobold camps. And this has now a GPM aura, which gives 20 GPM to all nearby heroes, friendly heroes. So if you get this in the early game, it's going to be 20 GPM for you and for your lane partner. So 40 GPM in total. That's not too bad, right? That's basically equivalent to having half of a Philosopher's Stone, so not too shabby. And we have the Kobold Soldier, who can steal weapons, so you have to attack someone 3 times with that though, and then it does another 9-second cooldown. So this is not very reliable, right? I mean, you have to attack someone 3 times, and attacking someone with a melee group 3 times is rarely going to happen outside of the very early game. And being disarmed for 3 seconds in the early game is also not that big of a deal. So this unit is not particularly useful. It's very niche. And then we have the Big Daddy Kobold, the Foreman, who has a speed aura. This is amazing. It's 12% movement speed in an aura. Heroes with boots typically have around 350 movement speed, and then this would add another 42 to that. So it's almost like having a second pair of boots. So this is a great creep. It's not that great at the start though. So if you find a Kobold creep at the beginning, and you only have level 1 in Persuasion, I would actually nowadays prefer the Kobolds here. With a 20 GPM, 20 GPM for your carry as well. That's in total probably most lanes going to be better than the speed aura. Although there are some lanes where that's not the case, and some lanes where movement speed is very important, the Kobold would be the better choice. But in any case, these Kobolds have very low physical damage outputs. They have low armor as well. So you don't want them for the combat stats, just for their abilities. Next up we have the Hill Troll, which can also cut together with the Kobold. And this one has an ensnare ability, which is quite powerful. This is a new addition. It used to be on the big troll. Now it's here. It's 1.75 seconds root. So this is really useful in the beginning in lanes where you need some lockdown. And so I would usually take this one over the Kobold Foreman in most cases, if you get the Kobold Foreman plus Hill Troll's camp. And it also has piercing damage, of course, so it's quite good at getting last hits and denies, but doesn't do too much damage against heroes. Next up, we have the Hill Troll Priest. This group has been significantly reworked. It now no longer has this continuous heal, but rather a heal with 10-second cooldown. But it only costs 60 mana. This guy has 500 mana points, so you can spam this quite a bit. And it's just more powerful during fights, right? And it also has a heal amplification aura. This is heal amp, not regen amp, and only amplifies healing. But of course, the group itself has some healing. You have some healing as Chen with the ultimate. And then you also often end up buying mech. So this is a great creep to take as Chen. It's good to have at the beginning of the game. It's also good in the mid game because of the aura. So this is a decently valuable creep. Although it's no longer quite as strong in the very early game as it used to be, when it just provided you nearly unlimited sustain with the continuous healing and the mana aura. Then we have the Hill Troll Berserker. This one has also piercing, obviously, and then break. That's the important addition here that came in the 7.31 patch. And this is break for 3-second duration. It does have 10-second cooldown, so it's not continuous. But it still can be very valuable against heroes that rely on passives. So if you're playing against a Husker, for example, breaking him is going to be very useful even for 3 seconds. Although later on in the game it's not going to be that easy to actually run out to people and break them. Like, let's say you're playing against a PA, she's not just going to stroll into the fight and wait for you to break her. And also, like, if you want to break her, you have to hit her first through her evasion. So it's not that easy to use these kinds of creeps later on. It's just a general theme that creeps that require you to get in close tend to lose in value later in the game because you just die too quickly. So later on in the game, you tend to just want creeps that have auras, you know, like this Kobold Foreman or this heal amplification aura, this sort of stuff. There's even more powerful auras. But still, this can be quite powerful in the laning stage against certain heroes and also in the mid game. And also just any creep with piercing damage is going to be quite good at just pushing out lanes. Next, we have the Ogre Frost Mage, another very powerful creep. Unlike the creeps I talked about previously, this one is found in a medium camp. And it has the Ice Armor ability. And this gives 5 armor as well as slowing anyone who hits you by 25%, both movement speed and attack speed slow. And this is a very powerful creep. You just want to take up this creep and just buff all of your heroes in your team, maybe also some of your creeps. This is a hugely valuable creep. It's quite strong in the early game as well, if you can find it. Usually it's not that easy to access the medium camps during the laning stage, but if you can find it, it's very powerful in laning stage as well. But this creep is great throughout the entire game. Having 5 armor and the slow is always valuable. Next, we have the Ogre Bruiser. This one is just a dumb hitter, but it also has Ogre Smash now. So this makes it actually a creep that you might, in some cases, want to pick up. This can be kind of useful for pushing out waves. It does 200 damage plus 8% of the unit's current health. So decent AoE ability, but of course you can see it's has quite a wind-up time, so it's going to be very difficult to hit actual heroes with this. So this is more of a farming ability. Next up we have the Ghost. This creep is great. She has a frost attack, slows enemies hit by 25%, attack speed and movement speed slow, as well as having just a huge amount of DPS. This creep is much more raw DPS than most other creeps. It attacks quite fast, has a high damage per hit as well. It is piercing damage, so this makes her great at just farming, clearing jungle camps and lane creeps. but she doesn't do that much damage to heroes. But the Frost attack obviously is very useful against heroes. And then we have a companion, the Fell Spirit. This one now has Vex, which is a silence. Doesn't have the most range, has 3 duration and 15-second cooldown. So actually using this later on in the game is not going to be that easy because the range is not great. But still, it can be a decently valuable creep. And later on in the game, this one is probably better for like straight up fighting than the Ghost. Although the Ghost still retains value in late game, just for split pushing and farming. Next up, we have the Centaur Courser. This one can only occur in medium and large camps, but it has the Cloak Aura, which has been buffed in 7.31. So now it offers 15% magic resist to heroes and 30 to creeps. This is a creep that's not very powerful in the very early game, laning stage, but in the mid game when you have a couple of creep slots available, picking up one of these is almost always a good choice. And just like 30% magic resist to your creeps, just makes it much harder for the enemy team to nuke down your creep army. So it's always a sort of a medium to high value creep in the mid and late game. Next we have the Vul, who has the Envenomed Weapon ability. This has been changed. It used to provide both damage over time and regen reduction. Now it's only regen reduction and no damage over time, and also the duration has been decreased. But it's 75% now. This is only regen reduction, so it doesn't stop heals like mech, for example, but it does reduce regen, so this is very powerful to get in the laning stage if you're up against a hero that relies heavily on high regen, like a Timbersaw, for example. You can just cut this by 3/4. So this is situationally a very strong creep. If you're not playing a hero with high regen, this is still, you know, decent, right? It reduces regen from tangos, for example, but it's not the craziest creep. Next up, we have the Shadow Banisher, also known as the Purge creep. This one can purge, which is a basic dispel to both allies and enemies. And when used on enemies, it also slows them down a lot at the start, and then the slow decreases over time. So this is very powerful creep situationally. If you're facing enemies that have some sort of buff on them, for example, it can be great. Purge this stuff off. So this creep can be super powerful in the very early game. Let's say you're laning against a Darkseer, for example. You can just purge off all his Iron Shells. Darkseer basically cannot lane against this creep. The mana is not inexhaustible. It costs a lot of mana. It's 120. Guy only has 500 mana, which is a lot for a creep, obviously, but still with such an expensive spell, it's going to run out fast. But in certain matchups, this creep is absolutely amazing. In other matchups, there's nothing to dispel. It's kind of meh. Next up, we have the interestingly named Giant Wolf, which now has the Intimidate ability. This means 50% damage reduction, which is quite powerful, but it's only 300 radius, so realistically it's very hard to actually use this to any real effect. In the early laning stage, you can maybe get some use out of this if you somehow pick up a Giant Wolf, but later on this is pretty useless and you would basically always just take the big wolf. Next up, we have the Wild Wing, who has copied his big brother's homework and now can use the Tornado ability. To demonstrate this, I've actually taken over a neutral Wild Wing here. So just like normal, you can cast Tornado and you can control this Tornado. Ideally, you have a control group for this as well. It does low damage in a large radius, and then when you come in closer, it does more damage, and it also slows. So this is very useful in the early game, and nowadays this Tornado also persists for 5 seconds after you stop channeling, but the regular channel duration is only 15 seconds. So it's a little bit weaker than the old Tornado, but it's on a low level creep. So this creep is amazing to take over at level 1 because this Tornado is quite annoying in lane. So these are all the level 3 and under creeps. These are the creeps that you have to choose from in the early game, but they can also be quite useful later on in the game. Especially like this one with her crazy scouting ability, the aura on this Kobold Foreman. This guy is strong in the early game and later on. Roots can also be useful. And of course, Ogre Frostmage, amazing ice armor ability. So some of these creeps are still very powerful later on. Center Course are also quite good. So don't underestimate these low level creeps even later on in the game. But now let's move on to the level 4 creeps. And there's only 3 of those. First one is the Saturn Mindstealer, who's already very powerful in the last patch. And what he does is has a mana burn. And this allows you to burn 100 mana every 18 seconds, which is super annoying. Like, you're going to reduce your opponent's mana by so much. So this creep, if you keep it alive, is incredibly powerful. And what you would usually do is you would just sort of maybe hide it somewhere in the trees, and you click mana burn on the enemy hero, and then you just shift click somewhere away. And it will run in, mana burn, and run away again. And this way you can keep this creep alive for a long period of time and just gain a lot of value over time. This is great in laning stage. Later on, it's kind of mediocre because only, a single fight you will usually only get off one of these, and then it's not that strong. But it still has the mana aura, which is a new addition, and this is 2.5 mana region, so that's basically just getting a free Crystal Maiden aura, roughly speaking. It's not global, obviously, but this is a lot of value over time in the mid and late game as well. So one of the strongest creeps in the laning stage, and later on still has decent amount of value. Then we have the Mud Golem, and these are not that great. They do 75 damage, but nowadays they also do double damage against creeps. So that's nice, you can get like last hits with these, but they're not that great. If they die, they split up, you get 2 shards. They can also use Hurl Boulder. They also no longer have as much magic resist as they used to have. Now they all have 30. I think that's just a rounding error. I think it's supposed to say 30. So these are not that great. Next up, we have the Hellbear that used to have the Cloak aura. Nowadays, though, it has the Swiftness aura. So this is a great aura creep to have in the mid and late game. It's only 15% attack speed, so it's not huge, but it's something. And it also has passive. If it dies, you get 100% attack speed on everything for 5 seconds. So even if this just dies early in the fight, you should at least get this burst of 100 attack speed for a little period. So this is a very useful creep in the mid and late game, but not great to have in the laning stage. And now we get to the big boys. So these are level 5 creeps. First of all, we have the Centaur Conqueror. This Warstorm ability, it's a 2-second stun on a fairly modest cooldown. Low mana cost as well. This guy almost never runs out of mana, so don't be afraid to even use this just for farming. This is great when you're level 5. When you first get these, they're very powerful. But as soon as you get to the sort of later stages of the mid game, it becomes increasingly hard to actually get off a War Stomp. So this is no longer that powerful of a creep in the late game. And typically in a late game situation, I would prefer having other creeps that provide auras and that don't require you to get in close to get their value. Next up, we have the Wildwing Ripper. This one has lost the Tornado ability, but now it has Hurricane. So what this does is it's a vector targeted ability that allows you to reposition an enemy. You can do something like this, and then stomp them. And if you can pull this off, it's obviously great, but honestly, it's going to be hard to pull this off, so it's not something that you can really rely on too much. But in compensation, the Wildwing Ripper also has a Toughness aura, so that's 3 armor aura, so this is never a bad pickup, and also has pretty good combat stats, slightly higher DPS in terms of right click than the other big creeps. So it's pretty good. Also has a lot of base armor as well. So 4 base armor plus the 3. So this creep has quite good combat stats. So even if you don't manage to pull off huge hurricane plays, this is still a good pickup. Next, we have the new addition, the Warpine Raider. This one has the Siege Shot ability that bounces on up to 4 targets, does 100 damage, and fairly short slow. So it has 100% slow, so heroes that are hit by this are going to be probably moving with minimum movement speed. So this is a decent creep. It doesn't have the most DPS, but it has a fairly high armor. So it's, I think, one of the stronger pickups. And the great thing about this creep also is that there's 2 of them in their camp. So you can just pick up both of them. If you hit level 5, you have this Warpine camp. That's always a nice bonus, and you can just throw so many seeds at enemies. Next up, we have the Alpha Wolf. The Alpha Wolf comes from a medium camp, unlike all the other level 5 creeps. And it has critical strike, which is not that important. It's 20% chance to get 200 crit damage, so it's 20% more DPS. But the more important thing is the Pack Leader's Aura, which is a 30 bonus damage to everything. So this is especially great if you have a carry hero that relies more on stats than on bonus damage. So obviously this only amplifies base damage. So if you have, let's say, like a hero like Luna that tends to build a lot of stat items, this can be great. But if you have a hero like, let's say, PA as you carry that buys more direct damage items, it's not quite as strong. But no matter what your carry is, they're going to benefit a lot from Pack Leader's Aura. And so are just your regular creeps. This is not the best pickup when you just hit level 5, but it's pretty strong at any stage of the game. Then finally we have the Hellbear Smasher, which has Thunderclap. So this is AoE damage and a slow. And similar to the Ascender Conqueror, it has fairly low cooldown, fairly low mana cost, so feel free to spam this just for farming. And then later on, just like the Centaur, this loses a bit of value, but you can still use this creep quite well to push out lanes. One change here from this creep is that you have this Death Throw ability, that when the creep dies, nearby allies get 50% bonus attack for 5 seconds. So that is quite a powerful ability. So even if this dies quickly in a fight, you still get some value out of it. But it no longer has the Swiftness art, because now that's migrated here towards the regular Hellbear. So this is also a very powerful pickup, and I would say probably even the most powerful pickup just when you hit level 5, because slows can be quite strong in the early game, and that damage obviously is more useful early than late. And then finally we have the level 6 creeps. First of all, the Dark Troll Summoner. This no longer has the Ensnare ability, sort of continuing this theme of smaller creeps getting the abilities for the bigger creeps. But now this has Raise Dead, which is an old ability, but now it's much better. So these skeletons have less base damage, but they now provide an aura, which is 3 bonus damage to everything nearby, and it stacks. So if you have 6 skeletons up, which you can do, the cooldown is 18 seconds and the duration is 40 seconds, then you're gonna get 18 bonus damage on everything, which is quite amazing. So this creep, the primary purpose of this creep is just to push out waves. You would just send out this creep, push one of your waves out together with your regular creeps, and your creeps also going to get all this bonus damage, so you can push out waves very fast with this. In terms of actual fighting, it's not that great. You're not going to keep all these little skeletons alive when you're in a team fight, right? That's not going to happen. Generally speaking, most of these other big creeps are going to be better for like straight up fighting than the Dark Troll Summoner. Then we have the Satyr Tormentor. This one has the Shockwave ability. This does 160 damage It has a very long range, so you might think, you know, this range is not that long, but actually, so in the cast range, the actual travel range is much farther here. Like it travels to this far. So this is a decent amount of damage, 160 damage. It's useful for fights in the early game. You can use it to push out waves. And then you also have this Unholy Aura, 5 health region, quite powerful. Problem though is that by the time you actually level 7 and can take this over, region is no longer going to be that powerful. But it's still a decent creep to have. And usually not something you want to pass by. But in terms of like the big creeps, the ones that you want to watch out most for is like in the early game, you're going to have like the Centaur, you're going to have the Warpine Raider, you're going to have the Hellbar Smasher, and then later on in the game, the biggest creep is the Alpha Wolf here. This is super powerful, and the rest of the big creeps kind of lose a little bit of value. I mean, this one still has this aura, which is nice, but oftentimes later on in the game, the best creeps are actually some of the smaller ones that just have these strong auras or strong abilities like this Ice Armor creep. Let's move on to the ancient creeps now. To take over ancient creeps, you need to have an Aghanim Shard, and you also need to have Hand of God. So for each level of Hand of God, you can get 1 ancient creep. So if you pick this up right at 15 minutes, you probably only have 1 level in Hand of God, but it can still be quite useful. So first up, we have the Dragon Camp, and the small dragon has an aura that gives you, doesn't actually say here, but it's plus 10% spell damage to nearby enemies, which is decently useful. But of course, as far as ancient creeps go, this one is fairly weak. What you really want from this camp is the Ancient Black Dragon. This one has 3 separate abilities. First of all, the Fireball. This does a lot of damage over time. This can kill a complete creep wave from 100 to 0. So this creep is one of the best at pushing out waves. And what you can often do in games is sort of just hide an Ancient Black Dragon somewhere in the trees and then sort of pop out, kill a creep wave, and then recall it with the Holy Persuasion. So a great creep for pushing out creep waves, but also this is so much damage that it's even relevant in team fights. This is kind of like a mini Macropyre. You also have the Splash Attack. This is 100% splash damage in the 250 range. So this combined with the Fireball makes this creep so good at pushing out waves. Then you also have the Aura, Dragonhide Aura, which is 3 armor aura, just like the Wildwing Ripper. But unlike that one, this one actually stacks with itself. So having 2 or 3 Ancient Black Dragons can be quite powerful. But generally speaking, this is more of a creep that they use for split pushing rather than for straight up fighting. As far as straight up fighting goes, what you really want is the Ancient Thunderhide. This one has the Slam ability, which is kind of a souped up version of the Thunderclap. And then it also has Frenzy, which gives 75% bonus attack speed. And it's 8-second duration, 8-second cooldown. So you can just spam this on your carry during a fight, give him 75% bonus attack speed. This is incredibly powerful, and you always want to pick up one of these creeps if you can. Then we also have the Ancient Rumblehide. This one has an bonus attack speed aura as well as an accuracy aura. So this means evasion piercing. So 40% of attacks of nearby allies are gonna pierce evasion. So this is a very powerful aura. Generally speaking, you would prefer the Ancient Thunderhide, the big one. But if that's not available, the Ancient Rumblehide is a decent substitute. So if you already have like one of these, maybe next you want to pick up an Ancient Rumblehide. Can be quite powerful, especially if you're dealing with evasion. One thing to watch out for with the Ancient Thunderhide is that its mana pool is quite limited. These abilities are very expensive. So generally speaking, you want to prioritize Frenzy. But if you have like Mana Boots or if you have like Mana Aura, here you can use your spells a bit more frequently. Then there's also the golems. The big golem provides a 15% bonus HP aura, which is quite a useful ability. This is like a great aura. You never like super excited to find these, but they're always useful. So these are great pickups as well. But generally, the other ancients are going to be a bit more valuable than this. But you can't afford to be too picky because only one ancient camp per side per minute. Then we also have the other golem, which now has an armor reduction aura. So it's kind of like applying a Blightstone on everything. You know, it's decent, but nothing to get too excited about. This is one of the weaker ancient creeps. And finally, we have our two newest additions to the game. We have the Ancient Frostbitten Golem and the Ancient Ice Shaman. The Golem here has a Time Warp aura, which is 10% cooldown reduction. Can be quite powerful. So this one is generally a bit stronger than any of these other small auras. Like, for example, the Swiftness aura or like the Cloak aura, but still, compared to most ancient creeps, not that impressive. And then we have the Ancient Ice Shaman, which has the Ice Fire Bomb, which does a large amount of damage over time. It's 50 damage per second over 8-second duration, so it's 400 damage in total magic damage. But so if you get this like early on, if you get like a 15-minute scepter or shard rather, you can get decent amount of value out of this. But later on in the game, this is not that impressive. So generally speaking, this ancient camp is not that great to take over. Also not the best combat stats here on this guy compared to some of the other ancient creeps. So this is my grand overview of all the creeps for Chen in 7.31. And obviously, all this being said, the most important thing is just get 4 creeps, right? It does not matter too much which creeps you take at the end of the day. There's some creeps that are better than others, but the most important thing is just take over as many creeps as you can. This is especially true nowadays because now every single neutral creep in the game has some sort of ability. Some of them are rather marginal, you know, others are like much better, but every single one of these creeps is better than not having a creep. Because at the end of the day, all the creeps you take over are gonna get a bunch of bonus damage and a decent amount of health. So even the lowliest creep, even just like basic lane range creeps, are gonna be useful at doing some stuff. And now it's time for you to go out and play some Chen of your own, or if you want some more guidance, I've put up some videos here on the screen that might help you, that are still relevant in 7.31. And all is willing, I'll see you there.
A fulfillment of the prophecy.